Hello, this is Carl King talking on the Carl King podcast. Quick shout-outs to my endorsement logos, Ernie Ball, Fractal Audio, and Toontrack, and then we're getting right down to business. You won't believe this, but Jon Schnepp and I are both running Kickstarters at the moment. He's running a campaign to fund the publishing of a new original superhero comic book called Five. That's spelled F-I-V-E. And I am running a Kickstarter to fund my new Adult Swim-style animated TV show pilot, The Oracle of Outer Space, which Jon will be starring in as a voice actor, along with Dweezil Zappa, Cosplayer Joanie Brosas, Ebony Amber, Clarke Wolfe, and more to be announced soon. So head over to Kickstarter.com and search for the word Five, that's spelled F-I-V-E, to fund Jon's comic book. And to get to mine, you can go straight to oracleofouterspace.com. Today's episode is a 100-minute marathon in which we talk about our current and past projects, diet, spelled D-I-E-T, motivation, creative freedom, and Jon even goes on a few tangents about movies, all while riding around Hollywood on his motorcycle. I'm here behind a restaurant in Hollywood with Mr. Jon Schnepp.
What's up, Carl?
I'm very sleepy, and I'm fighting it.
Oh, man. It sucks to be sleepy.
Are you sleepy at all?
I am not, but, I've had a good night's sleep. So.
Do you ever fight the sleepiness?
I do.
As you get older? We're getting old.
Oh, yeah. All the time. I'm watching a TV show. I'm falling asleep while I'm watching the show, which is, normally that doesn't happen.
Yeah, because that's the thing you're excited about.
Yeah. You're like, oh, I can't wait to get to this program, and now I'm tired while I'm watching it. So, but I'm not tired right now, especially because I've been drinking all this coffee. So.
Oh, good. Does coffee mess with you at all physically, or can you just keep chugging it? How much do you drink?
So much of it, I can keep chugging it. I love it. It is my drug of choice, and it doesn't really mess with me. I love being amped up, so it's a good thing when I'm like writing or drawing. Yes. I go to a coffee house. I like to be outside in an environment where there's like, stuff going on, but then I could constantly get a refill of coffee and keep, writing weird shit or drawing weird shit. So
it amazes me what types of things we can come up with when we're jacked up on caffeine that might not have otherwise happened.
Yeah, and then if you're like too fucking jacked up, then you're sort of like, you might be like overthinking or thinking about nothing, but then you could just let that be something.
You might think what you've done is really cool and then look back on it. I guess it's kind of that way with people who do other drugs and stuff.
It's less like that with coffee.
But with coffee, it's like enthusiasm for me. I'm like fucking excited about whatever I'm working on at that moment. I'm like, I'm going to make 5 documentaries today.
Yeah, I don't think, but like, with some other drugs that you were mentioning that we won't go into details with, maybe you're talking about something that seems really cool, but it's really not, or you're like talking about like kind of vacant ideas, but filled with a lot of words. I think it's less so with coffee. I think you can just really kind of almost tunnel vision focus whatever it is you're doing. I think that's what, at least for me, that's how coffee works. So.
That's true. I used to write a lot of music in college, sitting between practice spaces. So there would be somebody playing piano and somebody be playing saxophone and stereo on sides of me, and I would sit there and write my music.
You're feeding off of that sonic dissonance. Yeah. You're like, yeah.
Yeah,
it
was good. It worked. We're both doing Kickstarters.
Yes.
I want to ask you about yours. You have this enigmatic title. I think it's called The Five, or just Five?
Just Five.
Just Five.
Yeah.
But it has only 4 letters.
Yes.
That's kind of weird.
That is weird.
Why did they do that?
I have nothing to do with that spelling. They should have been P-H-I-V-E, 5. Yeah. Well, it's a comic book that I've been thinking about writing for many years, and it touches on a lot of different of my favorite subjects in comic books, not just superheroes or the idea of being transhuman or superhuman, meta-human, but it also deals with horror and science fiction elements of comic books. Like one of my favorite runs ever is Alan Moore's Saga of the Swamp Thing.
Oh, yeah.
As well as Miracle Man. So he really kind of like did his horror take, and then he also did his superhero take. And
are you getting into a dirty bathtub in the mud and the weeds and stuff when you write, like Alan Moore did with Swamp Thing?
Nope, no, not even.
I saw you flopping around in a trash can behind the place.
Yeah, trash, not bathtubs. Yeah, it's it's dumpster diving. But yeah, so this is sort of I feel like I just kind of wanted to do a different take, because the more I've been reading a lot of more recent comics, the more I've been looking for a take on all of my interests. So I was sort of like, well, why don't I just do it? Because I'm not getting it. I'm getting different people's takes on certain things. And also, I sort of felt like I love the character, the Batman, and I love the Fantastic Four. Mm-hmm. And I love especially certain versions of those characters done by certain writers and drawn by certain artists. So I've got my own stories with those characters in them, and I felt like I'd probably it's really tough to get to work for DC or Marvel. Mm-hmm. So I just started to mutate my own stories and transform them, and then I was like, well, I should just combine them. So then that's kind of what I did, is I made Batman part of the Fantastic Four.
Wow.
Which is why it's called 5. And it's also playing with certain tropes that happened in movies.
Have you said that publicly about what it is, or in the Kickstarter or anything?
I've said it's like what if Batman was part of the Fantastic Four, or what if Batman joined the Fantastic Four. I've been very enigmatic about it.
Yeah.
Because it's like a composite version of a whole bunch of different kind of vigilantes, like that kind of mindset. So it's not specifically Batman, but it's also not specifically the Fantastic Four. It's like a lot of different, kind of superhero origins that all happen. So it's, but it is definitely, there are family members involved in this, and it's a larger group of people. There's basically 13 people who get kind of like mutated and or transformed by this event that happens. And of those 13, 5 of them kind of join together to become sort of like a team. So I'd almost call it a little more like Challengers of the Unknown, which is a comic book that Kirby did before the Fantastic Four. But this one has a lot of other kinds of science or science fiction elements to it. I also wanted to do a comic where I could have like giant robots fighting giant monsters, but also be really savage and kind of as realistic as something like that, which is obviously totally Godzilla style, but take it with really deadly serious. So I'm kind of having fun with all the things that I loved as a kid, but then kind of writing them as an adult and a little more serious. It's not going to be like, with zero fun or zero, there'll be sensibility to it, but it's definitely not the Marvel style, and it's definitely not like what I might call a DC style, where it's like, I don't know. I feel like as I'm writing it right now, it's like it's not everyone is like psychologically damaged and brooding in a corner or something, but I definitely have a couple of these characters who've gone through a lot of stuff, and are still going through stuff, still going through situations. So it's not like a super villain every episode. It's definitely not, I'm not writing it like that. It's more like, a series of things happen to these people, and now they are all reacting to it in different ways, both positive and negative. And that's where the story starts, and we go from there.
A lot of motorcycles out here.
I know. Wow. I'm on a motorcycle. Yeah.
Everybody look at me. What is your actual process when you write one of these things? Because I see you in there. When I got to the restaurant, you're back there. You're drawing these panels and everything. You're drawing the comic. What happens before that, and how do you formulate these things on paper? Notes?
Well, yeah, for myself, like
scripts.
Yeah, I started out like the last couple of years. I've been writing a bunch of different comic books. I wrote the Slayer comic, and I just wrote a kind of a one shot for Zenescope, which is like a kind of a Tales from the Crypt comic that I wrote.
What was what do you mean by a one shot?
It's just one episode. So it's
episode of what?
It's called Tales of Terror, I'm pretty sure. It's a Zenescope new comic book.
Okay. Wasn't that the guys you did some stuff with a few years ago?
Yeah. No, I did a Grim Fairy Tales animated pilot with them.
Yeah.
And so, I just, after I finished writing the Slayer comic, I kind of was asking around to a few different companies because I was like, it's like kind of getting into this writing kick. So I wanted to explore. And they were like, hey, we've got a rough idea if you want to jump in on that. And I don't even know if I successfully followed their rough idea, but they were cool with it. So it was like, they're like, well, you didn't really do that, because I handed in the script. I was like, here it is. And they're like, all right, but it's good. So I was like, so my process is sort of like, as I'm thinking about the rough idea or the rough story, then I start to come up with characters and motivations for those characters and who they are, what happened to them, and how they interrelate to the other characters. And then as storylines or characters come to me, I'll just write them in my phone. Like I just have a notes page where I just keep adding to it.
Yeah.
So, over the course of a couple months, I'd been working on this, and I didn't even really have a title or name for it yet. I just knew, I was like, hopefully by the end of this year, like after I do my poetry book, I'll launch this comic book, because those are the two things I really wanted to do this year. Was I wanted to get my poetry book published, and then I wanted to write my own independent comic book. So as I moved forward and got the comic more shaped out, I started to write out scenes. Scenes would come to me, and that's how all of my writing is like, think about stuff, then I don't think about it for a while, and then I'll be out doing something, and then a scene will come to me. Yeah. Like it'll get triggered by something. Yeah. And then I'm like, I got to write it down. So I instantly go to my notes and I write the scene down. Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be fleshed out. It just has to be the scene. Yeah. And sometimes I don't even know which character it is for. Sometimes it's like, I know which character it's for, but a lot of times it's like a situation or a scene or a conversation that relates to the general story. Yeah. So that's kind of where I've been for like the last month. But you sort of
make the start and end point of the container of the project, and then throughout your day you'll see things that trigger and start filling in the details, kind of?
Yeah, with no particular place. Like, I don't know if it's going to be in episode 1 or episode 2, episode 3. There's 5 issues, but the one thing I did know is I'm structuring each issue as in an act, like it's a 5-act movie. So each issue is like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4, Act 5. So, which a lot of blockbuster films now have. Act 2 is literally Act 2, 3, and Act 3 is Act 4, 5. So it's like there's these semi, climaxes, which are not real climaxes, and certain things are, figured out, but a lot of things aren't. So I just thought it'd be kind of a fun way to approach that with that kind of a writing style. But I'm also kind of, especially within the first issue, jumping back and forth in time. So, not time travel, but just, years and days and things like that. And the other thing, too, is like, a little bit of how I'm structuring the 4th issue is because this is sort of it's an introduction to these characters who are the 5, but it's also an introduction to about 4 other characters who, are all part of this, but also kind of spin out into their own stories. So that's why I've been promoting it like, hey, I'm launching my own comic book universe, because
I saw that.
That's kind of the idea, is like, after I get this one done, and a comic book company has already said they would publish it for me. So after I get these initial 5 issues finished, and I'm going to be like laying them out. I'm not 100% sure I'm going to draw or pencil all of them. I know I'm laying them out and doing breakdowns for every single page.
So are these the breakdowns that you were doing right now?
Those are super rough layouts. Like the actual breakdowns I'll be doing on a comic book page, like an actual full page. It depends though. Like, I asked for the bare minimum as far as for my Kickstarter. Like, what is it going to cost to print, like, 5 different comic book issue 1s with 5 different covers. So I have all these amazing artists contributing a cool cover for each of these variants. Then how much is it going to cost for, making the trade paperbacks and hardcovers and a couple of these one-offs. I didn't go crazy. They're like, I don't want to like, here's a patch, here's all this other stuff. I was like, I'm just going to keep it very specific to the item, because that's where, with the Death of Superman, I was like, I still owe people in Europe like posters because it was so expensive. I ran out. I didn't have the money to send them. Like, so I've literally got, everyone got their Blu-ray, everyone got the DVD, all the people in America got the posters, except for like about 20. So, it's been like this piecemeal thing, it's years later. A lot of people are still like, where's my stuff? It's like, everyone's going to get all their stuff. It's just so expensive. Yeah. And that's one of the things that, since this was a little early on in Kickstarter's universe, where it's like, I remember even the year before that, I remember with Grim Fairy Tales, they were like, here, get this keychain and all this crazy stuff. And you're like, oh man, what a nightmare. So it's just, for myself.
And here's the other thing that people might not realize: when you're doing all of these different items, you have to, if you don't ship them out at the same time, that's another shipping fee to ship the keychain, then to ship the poster, then to ship the Blu-ray. And I got in a little bit of trouble for my last project because I waited until I had enough of the things all at once. I wanted to ship everything at once, but people started complaining. Yeah. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to eat it. I'm just going to have to do multiple shippings.
Yeah, but it really sucks because when you're shipping something that you had accounted for being $2.64, and then it's two costs of $10 each. Right. You're like, oh, each one costs $20. So it's like, it's almost like you've just lost half of the money you raised on Kickstarter. Yeah. So I'm trying to be really smart about that. As far
luckily, most people are super supportive and understanding that they're doing this thing because they're going to support the artist and the creative person. And, that's why I do it.
That's why I do it too.
I don't give a shit if somebody sends me their thing or whatever.
With my poetry book, I was like, look, I'm gonna get this poetry book done, and it's gonna take a little bit of time. And so I just give people updates, like I'm doing each chapter has an art piece that I'm doing an art piece for it. So, originally it was hey, I'll get it done in San Diego Con. Well, now it's New York Con, and then it's like, oh, it'll be definitely like around Christmas or somewhere around there. But everyone's been like, look, just, we bought it because we want it. We want this thing from you. So we don't need to rush it. Yeah. Don't deliver it in 6 years, but, like we're cool as long as you keep updating us. So that's kind of been my approach. And that's why I like with the comic book, the bare minimum is what it is, but it'll take me, it takes about a day to pencil a page, to fully pencil something. Wow. So I'm hiring an inker and a colorist and a letterer, but I would like to hire a penciler, but I'm just not sure I'll have all that money. So, that's kind of where I'm at, where it's like, I'll figure something out. But ultimately, right now I'm just concentrating on the story and how it's all going to play out, and it's pretty exciting and it's really fun. So it's, it's like, it's looking good too. The Kickstarter is, about 58% funded.
That's really good
as of today, and
you're
about 2 weeks
halfway.
left.
So you're halfway through, and it's halfway funded. That's great. Something popped into my head when you were talking about this stuff, and I don't remember if we talked about this before, but I remember clicking on your Kickstarter profile, and it showed how many Kickstarters you've supported. Yeah, and it was like somewhere around 100. Yeah, and that's unbelievable. Like, I don't know how many people support 100 Kickstarters. It's amazing.
Me.
You're putting it back into the community.
Most definitely.
And and here's something that people might not know because they haven't hung out with you or whatever. Right. I remember years ago when you were doing Metalocalypse and we'd go out to dinner or lunch or something. You'd always buy dinner, always buy lunch. You're like super generous with your money. Oh, so it's interesting to see the Kickstarter thing, and it's kind of like sort of like tame this energy flow of money and like direct it towards something. Yeah, well, it doesn't go into you and your lifestyle or something.
Yeah, no, I've always been relatively broke, but and even when I was doing Metalocalypse, I was making an incredible amount of money. I would put it back into other people's art.
Yeah, I was buying people's statues, and you hired a lot of people.
Yeah, I would hire a lot of artists to work on different things with me. True. And because I feel like that's what I want to do. I enjoy creative projects, and
Yeah, I remember you were always making something and hiring a bunch of people to do visual effects and.
Yeah. So I mean, it's sort of it's a weird thing. Like, a lot of corporations don't kind of understand that. So, but that's the difference when like at least with Kickstarter, that's why I like doing projects through Kickstarter, because it's artist driven, it's artist funded. There's other people who are like out there to help artists. So I mean, that's why I love contributing. I'm not one of those people who only buys tech stuff. I've bought a couple of like
tech stuff?
This phone, this camera lens. But I did buy a couple of camera lenses this past year that would work with the iPhone, because it was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But mainly I've supported art books, comic books, films, all kinds of things like that. So photography books, it's stuff in the arts, comic books, other people's comics.
Yeah, I started having that feeling recently because I bought a bunch of sort of more corporate statues and stuff.
Right.
Like a big Iron Man bust and Juggernaut, Danger Room, Kotobukiya type stuff.
Sure.
And then when I start seeing places like Monsterpalooza, there's these people who make shit by hand, like one-off, like Doug Stanett, or I don't know if you know him, but his booth was right next to mine when we were hanging out there. Unbelievable one-of-a-kind pieces. And I'm like, I need to support that shit. Like, that is more meaningful and goes directly to this independent.
Well, there's Designer
artist.
Con that's coming up November 11th and 12th, and that's got a lot of people's,
Tara McPherson
Tara McPherson will be there. Alex Party will be there. Skinner, I think, is going to be there. A lot of artists that I've worked with and they're friends of mine. Stranger Factory will be there. I mean, a whole bunch of these different people who are just independent artists who have their own style and make their own prints and toys, and so it's great to go there and see what they're up to and get some of their art or prints or whatever, and and they're always discovering new artists and new things there. So that's what I love about Designer Con. And that's why I kind of like about all the different like bigger cons. Like New York Comic Con has a thing called the Block, where it's just this area which is just all kind of like Mondo posters or like independent vinyl toys, or all this whole kind of like section of non-corporate
mass produced
non-mass produced product, so to speak. So but I mean, honestly, it's sort of Kickstarter is a place where if you want to try to make something, I think that's the place to go. It's a good place to prove your project, not just to yourself, but like if other people are like, if everybody's like, I'm not interested, then maybe you shouldn't do it, or maybe you should rethink it. Well, and that's what I did with not all of my Kickstarters have been successful. I did a documentary that I was trying to raise all the money for, and I should have just done it in sections. It was the Sweaties Unite. Like I was trying to do a documentary about comic book stores, and I feel like, and I raised quite a bit of money, almost $50,000, but I pulled the plug on it because I wasn't going to raise the whole amount. And some person had contacted me, was like, I'll give you the money outside of Kickstarter. And I was like, well, I've got a week left, I might as well pull it. And then that person didn't come through. So I was like, which is fine. I was going to pull it anyway. I was like, look, I'm not going to it's not going to magically appear like $100,000. So, I got to rethink it. And when I rethink it, I'll relaunch it. So I'm pretty sure next year I'm going to relaunch it. With a much smaller way of doing it, where I'm like, hey, look, this is what I'm going to do, and then if we get this money, then I'll do these other, comic book stores, but I'll, basically cover, a certain amount of stores, and the general idea. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about, because it's like, I think it's important for people who are not comic book readers and people who are afraid to walk into a comic book store to just walk in and experience it, and also know what to do once they walk in there. So I feel like just going through and purging that kind of weirdness is part of what I want to do. And then the other part is to make people aware of like not just comic books, but graphic novels, and just the idea of reading comics and why it's great. So I feel like that's slowly becoming a missing art as giant superhero movies become the biggest movies on the planet. There's less and less people actually reading the original source material as to where they came from. So it's kind of an odd predicament.
Yes. Do you have the same sort of feeling that Alan Moore has towards comic books being made into movies at all? Like,
no, not at all.
But you do have a deep respect for comic books and graphic novels.
I do, but
as their own thing.
It's like everybody's a nerd, and yet nobody's a nerd. So it's like everybody's proudly wearing a Green Lantern shirt, but they don't actually know who created Green Lantern, where Green Lantern came from, what was the first appearance of Green Lantern. And I'll admit, none of those things matter really, but that they never actually read a Green Lantern comic at all kind of bugs me a little bit, because it's like, I get it. It's like you're into football, but you've never watched it get played, and you don't know any of the people who've ever played it, but all you've ever done is play a video game version of it.
When I see a Mr. Bungle shirt at Hot Topic, I'll have a mental breakdown like you're talking about. But that might be the same kind of thing for me, like something that I feel like I'm deeply connected with or understand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like when you're into a band and then all of a sudden everybody's into it, you're like, that was my band first. Yeah. There's a little bit of that, but at the same time, I'm really happy that everybody, it loves comic book characters, and it doesn't have to be the same way that I love them. I just think it's cool that everybody is like getting into the storylines and all the things that were that I was so into when I was a lot younger, and that I'm still into. A lot of people are finally discovering that or experiencing it on some level. And they don't have to experience it on the same level as me, but Alan Moore is like, he's an interesting guy. I mean, I love his writing. He's
Did you ever meet him?
Never met him. I think he's one of my favorite writers of all time. I'm bummed that he's turned into kind of this curmudgeon-y warlock who, I mean, it's like, look, he's completely welcome to his exactly how he is and his opinion on the on his projects and what people have done. But I feel like, to a certain degree, like he's kind of done what he's complaining other people are doing to his work, in one sensibility, where he did the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. He's using all these different people's characters, like Louis Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and all these other literary characters, James Bond. I mean, he's using all these different people who are dead, the writers and authors of these characters, H.G. Wells, War of the Worlds. I mean, it's like, these are all, Jules Verne. I mean, I'd say they're not alive anymore. So, but he's taking those creations and combining them into making them, all these different characters have now teamed up to be this super team. Now imagine if all those people were still alive, they'd be like, I don't want you to do that with my character. So it's sort of like, I feel like, now DC is doing that with his Watchmen characters, and he's pissed. He has every right to be pissed because he's alive, but I'm just saying, it's like, it is kind of one of those things where you're like, look, it's real difficult sometimes to think about, like, well, especially when it's contractual, like, I don't really know what was said. Like, he was supposed to get his rights back when Watchmen stopped being published, but it's been in constant publication because it's one of the biggest selling books ever. So DC is always going to keep it in publication, so they'll keep the rights to it. So it is one of those, like, catch-22 that he's like, oh, well, eventually they'll stop publishing it. Well, no, they won't. And, because you signed off on that, he didn't think that. So, that's it. It's weird. And also that, I get it that he loves film, and he actually kind of wants to be a filmmaker. He's been kind of getting involved in making short films and stuff, yet he's really reticent to, like, sign off on any of these other films or work with any other filmmakers for adaptations of his own comics. I think mainly because there's, like, all this bad blood with what happened with all of his other comics. So, I mean, I kind of just, honestly, I try to separate those two and don't really think too much about it. I love his new comics that he is writing when he writes them. I loved Neonomicon, which was crazy weird, H.P. Lovecraft, kind of like, he also did a whole thing with him, about him and about, so, I take any kind of new Alan Moore writing and I'll buy it and I'll ingest it, and, I try not to get too into where he is with the rest of the comic book field, because he's got a lot of issues that are not my issues. So I feel like, and I've tried to see both sides, or definitely tried to see his side, but ultimately I'm not him, and I can't really fully understand it. So
I think you mentioned Lovecraft, and also related to Kickstarter, did you see that Pete Von Schally recently just completed his
Yeah,
got
and
funded.
I contributed to that.
Yeah,
son
me
of
too.
Son of Urg, or
Yeah.
Son of Ugg.
Yeah.
And he's doing he did a really great Lovecraft at the Mountains of Madness.
Yeah. And that's another nice thing to see is dudes like that with their booth jammed full of crazy art and, still doing his thing.
Yeah, no. Pete's awesome. I mean, I think, but that's what's so great about Kickstarter is like, when you're asking for like, look, this is what I'm going to need to make this thing, and that you try to just keep it at that, and then I'm going to also need money to ship it, and you try not to make some crazy promises. I can do all of it for $7.
Yeah.
It's like, look, I'm going to need X amount, and if I don't get that, then I'm glad I'm not doing it because I don't want to make false promises. That's what some of these other crowdfunding sites, they're like, well, if I don't raise all of it, you're asking for $20,000, but you only raised $3,000. How are you possibly going to make all those pogo sticks and ship them? Well, I can't.
Yeah.
Well, what are you going to do with that $3,000? I'm going to eat lunch every day for like a month, and no one's getting anything. You're like, I don't understand that kind of like, if I only raise X amount, it's like, well, you didn't raise enough to even make the thing that the lowest thing.
Are you talking about like Indiegogo or something?
I'm talking about all the different ones. I just don't understand that kind of price point where, like, you have to be able to deliver what you promised. I mean, and I think a lot of people like yourself and myself especially learned like the shipping problems and the don't overpromise like all these weird things. Like here's T-shirts. It's like I know you might have some better way of doing T-shirts than I did, but T-shirts are like super expensive and hard to ship and make, and I regret promising T-shirts because I was like, oh, we'll make T-shirts, and it was like, oh my god, it's super expensive, and then all these different sizes and making them and
did you do
them.
like full color T-shirts and stuff?
No, we just canceled them and I sent posters instead. I was like, look, okay. I was stupid and I can't send T-shirts, and some people were pissed, but to be blunt, 85% of everybody was like, no, we get it.
Yeah.
Because it was like a couple of years later, and people were like, well, where's my stuff? I was like, I can't make this stuff, because it was like, literally people forget Kickstarter's to help the artist make the thing. It's not just like, where's my Blu-ray? It's like, well, you're helping me fund this thing, and then in exchange for that, I'm sending you a Blu-ray. It's not like, well, I'm paying a lot for this Blu-ray. You're not paying anything for the Blu-ray. The Blu-ray is a free thing. What you're paying for is sort
of a shift of mindset.
Well, but people should really think about it like that. Yeah. Like, it's like the old school PBS telethons where, as a little kid, I never understood, well, why is that book $90? It's not worth $90. It's not about the book being worth $90. It's about you contributing $90 so that you get more PBS programming. And because you contributed $90, they're going to send you this cool book that the author signed or some shit like that. So
there's people I support on Patreon just for the hell of it, just because I think, it seems like a cool person. I don't even really know what they're doing. I'll learn about them as I go.
But honestly, I think that's about 70% of all the people who still are on Kickstarter get it. They're like, look, I'm going to contribute because I support you. I don't care how long it takes. I know I'll get it eventually. I just think it's a cool thing, and I want to help you make this thing. And that's the kind of thing I dig. I'm like, look, those are the people that I'm like, all right, well, you're contributing for the right reasons, and if you like the other stuff I've made, then you won't be disappointed because I'm staying in the same kind of wheelhouse. So what's your thing kind of came out of the blue. I was like, you've been doing a lot of different projects. You did a documentary. You obviously were the DP on our film, me and Holly's The Death Superman Lives What Happened. And then you were like, I know you were doing a bunch of different bunch of different things, but then you were like, hey, I've got this cartoon thing. And I was like, all right. And then I watched it. I was like, this looks like a lot of fun. How did that come about?
I started writing it a couple of years ago. Started working on the concept when I was on a road trip.
What is it called again?
It's called The Oracle of Outer Space.
The Oracle of Outer Space, which I actually contributed to on Kickstarter, which you should also contribute to.
Yes, thank you.
Who are listening, contribute to both me and Carl's Kickstarters, because there'll be about a week and a half left when you hear this.
I'm going to get this up as fast as I can.
Yeah, so I mean, so it's Oracle of Outer Space, and I Carl, I think you called or emailed me about it, and I was like, oh man, I'd love to be involved. So I'm gonna.
I texted you at random. We were just talking about something else, and I said something about, by the way, I'm doing this cartoon. You're like, I want to do a voice.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah, because like I had done a bunch of different podcasts with Carl pretty early on, like when I first met you.
Yeah.
And I just had fun doing dumb voices and doing really stupid interviews.
There's a particular voice you do that I don't know if you've ever used in anything, but you do sort of like this evil alien voice. It's kind of high pitched. and screechy.
Is it like this?
Sort of.
Where
but
are they? Aha.
Yeah.
And I will destroy all of them.
something like that.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, you'll just have to play it for me. I can
Yeah.
mimic it.
Yeah. It's really close
weird.
to that. But yeah, like I know.
So how did this Oracle of Outer Space come about?
Oh, driving through the desert. I went on a road trip with the wife. Driving around the middle of nowhere, we decided to go, and this will sound a little stalky, but we're like, hey, let's look up where Art Bell lives and try to find it. Doing the,
Sure.
do that in L.A. all the time with, wonder where David Lynch lives or something. Let's go check it out. Take a ride by, take a peek, keep going. You don't infringe on their privacy or anything. But we decided to drive out to Pahrump. We found Art Bell's place.
Right.
And I was a huge Art Bell fan for
yeah.
a million years, living in Florida in the middle of the night, staying up all night listening to AM radio. Drove through there. We went out by Area 51. That was fun. We stopped at some weird little cafe.
Right.
Right by Area 51. It's like in a trailer. They set up a cafe. And on the walls, they have Polaroids of all of the these old-time conspiracy theorist dudes that I used to read. I'm like,
Nice.
oh, they've all been here. They all
Nice.
stopped at this little trailer to, whatever.
That's awesome.
And just getting that whole vibe of AM radio. And I was like, oh, I need to make a cartoon about this. This has got to be a thing because I love it. So it was just a sentimental thing to me that I wanted to capture the vibe of. And I thought, what if there was this horrible AM radio station they're trying to do their thing and it's falling apart in outer space.
Nice. Well, that sounds exciting.
In sort of the modern age, where is the place of AM radio? And they're like the last holdout for AM radio.
Yeah, Art Bell, I've listened to many nights.
Yeah.
Back in the day when I lived in Chicago, I remember listening to him many
Really?
times. Yeah.
Wow. That's like the up all night drive-in thing, and you find it on AM radio when you're doing a cross-country trip or something in the middle of the desert. And it just creates this vibe.
Mm-hmm. And so you've got, you're doing this animated, so I've seen like from the Kickstarter, you've got a lot of the characters designed.
Yep. Yeah, we've got pretty final designs on them by Lance Myers. I don't know if you ever saw any of his stuff, but he did a cartoon called Skip and Lester, which is how I discovered him. He also did a thing called the Ted Zone, I believe. You ever heard of that?
No.
I think it was made for Adult Swim, and then it didn't get aired or something.
Okay.
And he also did A Scanner Darkly.
Mm.
He was lead animator on that.
That's great. Very trippy.
Yeah.
Trippy film.
Yes. So he's been doing tons of my artwork for years. I've been hiring him whenever I have money. Hey, I need another poster or something. Draw me this.
Right on.
So I'm there funding him on the side as his freelance thing.
Nice.
Just love his animation. So, yeah. And I've got a couple of writers who I almost never see in person and almost have never seen in person. We're only friends on the internet.
Right.
For like 20 years, they've been writing stuff with me.
You're cracking out that Art Bell fucking handbook, right?
Yeah.
But there's in this there really are aliens, right?
Yeah. There's an alien. I'm not sure how that's all explained in anything yet. But we'll get there. But yeah. But yeah. So we've got you doing at least one voice, if not two. We got Joanie Brosas, the famous cosplayer, extraordinaire. Dweezil Zappa is on board. He was the first one on board.
Yeah, that's right. No,
I think is huge.
Dweezil, I remember him doing a voice for Metalocalypse. He's
oh yeah.
Yeah, he's
Do you remember what he did?
He plays the bully.
Oh.
Who was picking on Toki at band camp.
Yes.
Yeah. So he did a great job too.
Was that at all related to the episode with Mike Patton somehow? Was that Ricky Kicks or something?
No,
was
the Ricky
that who
Kicks
that was?
Mike Patton one is totally different. Yeah, that was the no drinking, like when Roxo was like going sober. Ricky Kicks was ultimately a total asshole.
Yeah.
It was like murdering people. Yeah. So, but yeah, Dweezil did a great job. So yeah, he's
Yeah, he did stuff years ago for Duckman. You remember that? It was on like USA or something. So yeah, he's got a voice that'll work.
Yeah, for sure.
I was going to ask you about your old comic book that you did. Do you want to talk about some of your old indie comics that you did? What was that thing that we found in your garage one time that was published by King Robot?
Was it Feral, the Yeti, the Sasquatch comic, or was it King Robot itself, the comic book?
I'm not sure.
Well, I did self-publish 2 comics in 2003, and I self-published one zine comic in 1991 called Unrefined Visions, which I sold in Chicago, which was like, I made it at Kinko's, and I drew hand-drawn covers for all of them. So, but And that was really more of like a weird auto-bio comic in 1991. Those are just, people just had started doing this stuff, and I was like kind of exploring doing something like that. And I was like literally just a few years out of college. So it's not like I really had a full life anyway yet, but it was more like kind of exploring a lot of social ideas. Yeah, years later I was like, hey, I'm going to just, it was really like, I'm going to take the money I'm making from editing the Orlando Jones TV show and throw that into making a comic book and to publishing my own sci-fi movie called The Removers.
Oh.
So that was made through Film Threat. They were the distributors, but I made the film. And so it's a short 20-minute, I'll have to get you a copy. It's this bizarre telepathic sci-fi action adventure. These secret agents, they didn't talk because they weren't real actors. So I was like, how do I get around them not talking? They speak via telepathy. So it's really crazy. And then I made these two bizarro comics. One was about Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Based off of a screenplay that I had written, which is like, it wasn't like a nice Bigfoot. It was a straight horror movie. Whereas like if you really found Bigfoot, you wouldn't want to find Bigfoot. So it was called Feral. And then the other comic was a sci-fi anthology comic, which I had just called King Robot. But there were 3 short stories that were like, I think 7 pages each. But I spent all the money paying the artists and publishing printing the comics with high glossy paper. I was so dumb, and I didn't know how to distribute them, and I didn't know how to deal with getting diamond distributors to I just didn't have the follow through. That's been a lot of my problems my entire career, is like when I make my own stuff, the actual follow through is the hard part.
What do you mean by follow through when you say that?
By getting I've finished the book. Now, how do you get it into bookstores? That part.
Okay.
The being the the publication part, the producer part.
Well, you got
that.
your documentary on Showtime, right?
Yes. Well, that was because Showtime showed up at the second time we were showing it at the Egyptian, and they were like, "How do I contact the people who own this film?" And I was like, "Well, it's I own it. You can talk to me." So it was literally like that's how that happened.
Oh, cool.
And the guy who ended up getting it bought, I was really happy to hear, like, a lot of the other people who worked with him were like, no one's going to want to see that. And he was like, no, you don't get it. There's a big, there's a big audience for this. And they're like, well, we think you're wrong. We made our deal. They put it on Showtime. And though he couldn't reveal the numbers to me, he said every single person had to kind of secretly apologize to him because everybody watched it. It was a giant hit for 2 years.
Yeah.
So it was like there's a mass amount of people who still recognize me, not even from the Collider Movie Talk or Collider Heroes show that I do on YouTube, but they recognize me from being the face on that movie. They're like, I saw you were, So it's kind of the benefit or not the benefit of being recognized is like people will remember me from being that person interviewing Kevin Smith or interviewing Tim Burton, So yeah, the Showtime thing was really great. But as far as like doing publications and books and stuff like that, that's why, for my comic book, I'm definitely, I was lucky enough to have this company, 2 separate arms of the company, reach out and say, hey, we'll publish the book when you get it done. So
through Kickstarter? I mean, they saw you on Kickstarter
no,
and stuff,
it's
or they just
separate
heard
people
about it?
Separate company people that I know from doing other things were like,
they just heard you were doing your new comic.
Yeah, and they were like, hey, do you have someone publishing? I was like, no. They're like, well, let us do that. So and I was like, all right. So once we get into next year, once I have to have the things done, then I'll announce that. So it's like, I can't announce who's doing it because I don't even know if I'm doing it yet. The Kickstarter's
things change so much.
Yeah, so but at least it's nice to know that I don't have to worry about that part of it, because I'd like all people everywhere, not just in America at comic book stores, but all across the world, to be able to get this comic if they so desire at a comic book store. So it'll have a different cover. It'll be different than this deluxe version that is only available on Kickstarter. That's the whole reason you get a Kickstarter. You're like, hey, like Bill Sienkiewicz is doing a cover. Liam Sharp, Chris Burnham, Nicola Scott, they're all doing variant covers, and they'll only be available, these variant covers for this Kickstarter. They won't be individual comic covers again.
I got a question for you. When I'm making my stuff, I usually try to make something really high quality if I can.
Yeah.
Try to get all the technical shit totally right.
Yep.
And obviously I make mistakes or whatever, but I aim for that expensive look.
Sure.
And then what I do is I will intentionally fuck up a few things so that it still has that vibe of like, oh, somebody kind of had their personal hand in this thing and messing it up or something.
Okay.
A little bit of trauma thrown in once in a while, or like self-sabotage.
I don't do that.
Okay, so do you aim for that same high quality, or do you like things that are lower quality, or how do you fit on that spectrum?
Boy, it's
because do you like when you see like trauma stuff and it's just awful or something?
not a super fan of.
Yeah?
I'm not a super fan of that. I love seeing the craft of filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a certain joy of anti-craft where it's just like some shumbly person, like all the camera angles are wrong and stuff like that. But that's not why I like film, and that's not what I like about storytelling. So I'm not trying to add defects into stuff. I'm trying to, if I'm shooting something and I have a certain amount of budget, I'm going to try to do the best thing I can with that budget. Yeah, I mean, sometimes there's way more craft to things than others. So, like especially with making documentaries, I learned slowly about hey, you can put more effort into doing better shots, because I wasn't really thinking about it like that. I've always come from it's, not thinking about it like it's a movie, and that's what I should be thinking about. Even doing interviews, they should be thinking about it like it's you're watching this. This interview, but it should be shot as filmically as possible or cinematically as possible. Which sometimes is difficult to do. Sometimes you can't do it. You're like, you have an hour.
And sometimes some of those things that we were shooting, it was stressing me out so bad because it was like, we're going to be in this little room in a corner somewhere.
And you're like, hey,
I'm just like sweating. I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do?
Well, that's but that's part of it. You got to roll with it where you're like,
and sometimes I just can't.
They're not going to go to your set. You have to shoot in their living room, and or you're shooting at this stage, and this is the only place, and all the lighting is weird. You find the best place possible where you can actually record the thing with sound, and it doesn't look like garbage, and then you have to rock and roll. So, I mean, that's just a lot. I mean, imagine low budget filming where I've carefully crafted these storyboards. None of those matter. We're not using that location. It's all in the beach now. You're like, I know, but they know.
It's on the beach now.
Yeah, it's at the beach. There is no background. What? So you just have to roll with it, I think, especially, but that's kind of the exciting part. Like what you're talking about, for me, the exciting part is rolling with it and thinking on your feet, especially when making stories. So for me, less so documentaries is where I'm going to, for next year, I'm going to, outside of that comic book doc, I'm really going to just kind of focus on storytelling, i.e. through comics. I'm going to try to make a feature film next year. That's a super weird feature film. And when I say it's a super weird film, I'm not striving to make it weird. It's just simply already whacked out and strange. So it's not like your typical story. So I'm like, all right, well, we'll see how that goes. But I'm excited to make it and to be able to run and gun a little bit of it. But the script is there. I know where I want it to move and how I need to move it, move through it. I'll be doing location scouting probably in the middle of the year. So I find all the places where I'll actually be shooting it, And the best thing about living in Los Angeles, there's a lot of incredible locations.
Well, there's that parking lot where we shot your Superman.
Yeah. But what I'm saying, though, is there's a lot of amazing locations that you can just run and gun and you just steal the locations. So that's that trauma aspect that you're talking about that I'm into, but I want to do it really locked down and I'm just going to board out everything, but I'm take photos of the backgrounds where I'm this is how it's all going to come together. So, I mean, there's a certain craft to that aspect of it, then that's where those kinds of things, the run and gun and get that, steal the location type thing meets I've methodically planned this out, and why is that background the best, or why is that that location the best for this scene in the film. I think a high budget or low budget, if you look at Blade Runner 2049, Denis Villeneuve and his DP, Roger Deakins, every single scene.
Oh, that was Roger Deakins?
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that.
Every single scene.
No, Roger Deakins?
Yeah. Every single scene.
Holy shit.
Is really thought through, whether they're walking through a hallway or whether there's a scene of a person on a phone and then they're talking to the other person on the phone.
Yeah.
Every single scenario and background reveals something about the futuristic world and about that character. And that's what's really important, I think, where it's not just a white hallway.
Yeah.
Or it's not just they're at the corner of their building, or it doesn't matter where they are. It does matter, especially when you're creating a tone and a world. And I feel like that film, I don't give a fuck whether it made money or not. It's an amazing film. People are so hung up on, well, I heard it didn't make money. Why do you care? What are you, an investor in it? That always bothers me when people are all hung up on on how much did the box office.
Yeah.
It's like I didn't realize you're somehow going to make money if it makes money. No. How about let's talk about whether you liked it or not. I'm way more interested in hearing why somebody didn't like a film or why they did like a film than how much the movie made. This kind of hang up on the box office, it's not, I'm going to say it's not the ruination of film, but it's part of the reason, there's a populist idea about films and certain films. Well, I'm just going to wait for Netflix on that. It's not worth my money. There's there's a whole kind of thing that's happened over the last 15 years, 10 years. And it's not just streaming. I mean, streaming is definitely the positive part that I think. It's like a lot of people are like doom saying, well, it's the death of film, it's the death of cinema. It's like, no, it's actually just a transformational technique where people are like, look, now I'm binging a 10-hour movie. So it's the idea of what a story is now is changing, and the context of how a series can be made as, instead of evergreen standalone episodes, as a thing that is one long story, because people are going to watch them rapidly in succession. I think that's a really amazing thing that's happened in the last few years, and it's great to see all of these different streaming channels take advantage of that. Hulu, Netflix, Amazon, and a lot of the other ones that are like, we're destination viewing, are all going to die because advertisers are not going to put any more money into any of those basic cable channels, and most of those basic cable channels only have one or two shows that people care about. So when you really think about that, you're like, so you're making 30 shows that nobody cares about and literally blowing hundreds of millions of dollars on these 30 shows that nobody is watching. Yeah. And all the advertisers are putting money in and they're losing money. And you have one show that people are watching that's on at 9 o'clock on Tuesday or on at 8 o'clock on Friday. You have one show that those the people are paying for those ads, it kind of works a little bit. But ultimately it doesn't, because then they'll watch it streaming later anyway. So, I mean, I feel like now it's like I'll watch it when I want to. And now that all of us have that power and that choice, it's kind of obliterated the destination, like prime time, whatever. None of that matters anymore. So I feel bad because a lot of people are going to probably end up losing their jobs in the next 2-3 years. Like all of those jobs will all be gone. So they've got to adapt or die kind of a situation, and it's a natural progression, because it's like, as people now, as all of us we're all on the internet, we all are on our phones, we all have these interconnected things, and that's just how it is now. It just happened naturally, or unnaturally, or however you want to say it. How's that for a tangent?
I'm curious about your viewpoint of competition in the scene that we're kind of in entertainment and all of that.
Right.
You've said in the past, you were in some tough situations where you were kind of clawing your way to get in or something like that. How do you view that sort of thing now, or do you have any more thoughts on that?
The idea of like making content and getting paid to make content is what everybody who not just comes out to California or Hollywood, it's the idea is like everybody wants that.
Yeah.
So when you go to conventions and are talking about a project or a TV show or a movie that you've worked on and made, a lot of those people in the audience, they all want to be you, but not you in particular, but they want your job. They want to be, they want to have what you have.
Yeah.
So their questions are always like, well, how do I get to what you have, or how do I be you? How do I become you? What did you do to get that? And sometimes people think, oh, you just do this, this, and this, or they want you to tell them some easy answer, and there is never an easy answer, because I think every single person has their own individual story as to how they not only just got to where they are or where they're going or where they've been, but how they got those site-specific jobs, and how they not only held on to those jobs, but were able to succeed in those jobs. And that therein is sometimes where it gets like, there's people that you're working with who are like, can almost like be counterproductive for you so that they can get ahead. Like they might lead you one way just to like, hey, go down this way. Like, it seems like this is a cliff. You're like, but they'll be all supportive of you jumping off that cliff. So you have to kind of, I feel like, look, and there's the other thing with like any job in the business as far as making television or movies. There's like 30 people ready to replace you, and they're super hungry. Especially if you've been doing it. Like I have had this job for 4 years. There's easily like when I was directing Metalocalypse, there were like easily 20 people who wanted my job, who wanted to direct the show, who wanted to edit the music videos, who wanted to do all the different things that I did on that show. Luckily, a lot of them couldn't. They were not me, and since I have a specific sensibility, a lot of people who end up making that show end up copying my sensibility. So it didn't bother me. I was like, well, you're just going to make it like I've already done. So you're just copying my style. So that's not a big problem for me. But what is like when you step away from something, you're replaced, and then whatever that thing is that replaced you, or those people are that replaced you. It's not like you can like come back and be like, well, I'm ready to come back now. It's like, sorry, there's 4 people who kind of came in and now they're doing what you did do. So that's kind of like, it's always a good time to know when you want to leave, or when a good time to leave is. And I'll sense it. And I was like, that's why I left when I left the show while it was still being made, because I was kind of done. I felt like I've said everything as a director and as a producer and everything creatively that I want to say on this show. And now I feel like I'm repeating myself, and other people are now repeating what I've already done. So I was like, I'm done. So I felt like it was the right time to go. And, I felt like, especially after watching, some things that happened later, I was like, I made the right choice. But sometimes you don't know what the right choice is while you're making something. You kind of have to just go with your gut. Yeah. And I've kind of ever since then went with my gut, and kind of, how I even got into making cartoons was just by simply being at this music video company, acting in music videos, and then making props and learning how to edit and do animation, because I had already done that while I was in art school. And
I have this sort of respect for your history, because I think of you, I don't know if this is accurate or not, but I think of you as this crazy college kid in Chicago, probably sleeping on somebody's floor or something, and just churning out crazy shit one after the other. This is my crazy art film. This is my crazy poetry. This is my performance art.
Pretty
going
much.
in every direction.
Luckily,
this is my comic book.
I had a little bit more than a floor to sleep on. I had a futon, but for the most part, it really was like that. And
but there's still that side of you that, through all of the Metalocalypse stuff and the Superman Lives, all of these different things you're doing, you still came from the roots of being this wild artist, creative mind that just spewing ideas.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. I am still like that.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part to work in a corporate. Yoo-hoo! That was me on a bike. The hard part of working in a corporate world is they don't understand that, and so they're sort of very. Usually it doesn't work out too well when I'm working in the corporate environment. So I've tried to stay away from doing that as much as possible, and will continue to stay away from that as much as possible, and be independent and work on my own projects, and or work with other companies that want to make cool stuff. So kind of that's,
having the freedom to move around and work with different people.
Yes. So that's one of the things I've enjoyed.
So freedom is something that's very important to you creatively?
Ultimately, it's the most important thing to me.
I just saw a Frank Zappa documentary either last night or the night before, and Gail Zappa was saying something that I had never heard before. She said that Frank loved 2 things the most in this world. And I thought, what is she going to say? Music and his kids or something like that? You think that's what she's going to say. But he said, number 1, he valued freedom. He loved freedom. Number 2, he loved music. And I was like, wow, the guy loved freedom even more than music. That's pretty crazy. So,
well, without freedom, you can't make music.
Right.
It really is like you have to have your freedom to be creative.
Yeah.
And when you have people who are kind of shackling you or telling you what to do, who obviously, number 1, don't even know what they're talking about. Number 2, telling you what to do with your own project that you came up with, there are big problems. And that's what happens in the corporate world where, there's a giant lack of understanding. There's a giant lack of patience and time, and usually that comes because there's deadlines and these things that are structured that all come with the money. And so it's like there's certain things where you're like, look, I get it, but that's why it's way better for me to like work without those structures in place, where it's like it's going to take as long as it's going to take, and then when it's done, it's done. Mm-hmm. And also, you can't tell me how to make something, because it probably won't come out as good as if I can make it myself, because I actually know what I'm doing. And so it's really important to know, A, who you are and what you're doing, and B, to make sure the people that you work with understand you and are going to give you the freedom to make the thing that they're actually hiring you to make. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's going to be a bad situation.
Yeah. I try to sort of jump back and forth between those two worlds and have a clearly defined understanding of which world I'm in at what time. Like there are corporate projects that I do that pay the bills that I have no problem following the rules and following, the powers that be. These are the instructions. This is what we're doing. Okay, I'm doing it. Thank you. We're good. Now I'm going to go do something completely fucked up over here that I want to do. I
get that too, but it's like the older I get, the less interested I am in doing any of those types of projects. And I've back in my late 20s and early 30s, I was cutting people's reels while I was editing TV shows and editing movies and doing animation for all these different projects. It was just jobs. Yeah. And now I don't care to do that, and I don't want to do that. Yeah. I don't even have the interest in doing that anymore. So
it took me a while to get used to the idea of doing that, though. I mean, at first I was like, I have to be creative all the time and do my own thing.
Right.
And then I started learning to separate. And now at this point in my life, I'm okay doing a little.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Yeah. All I'm saying is like even with that separation, like I'll do everything I can to not have to do those things, because I feel like ultimately.
If you don't have to, then you don't have to.
Yeah.
That's a nice place to be.
I mean, and talking and doing these YouTube shows is one of those things that, like, to me is like my outlet to do that, but it's fun for me. So it never feels like work, because I'm talking about things that I'm really invested in, i.e. film and, fantasy, science fiction, comic books, the horror genre, all these kinds of things that I love. And I'm talking about it with other people who love it or have the similar interests. So I feel like these discussion shows that I'm a part of, I really enjoy doing.
You've got great hosting skills. I remember the first time I saw you really do that is you went on stage at the last minute. Somebody came up to your booth and was like, can you get on stage and interview, Michael Rooker?
Yeah, Michael Rooker, yeah.
And you were like, shit, yeah, come on, get your camera, let's go. And we ran up to the stage, you went onto the stage, and you were on fire. It was great.
Oh, right on, man. Thanks. Yeah.
And I remember you coming off stage with this high of man, why can't I do that all the time?
Well, you know what's funny about that Michael Rooker thing too is because Michael Rooker is awesome. I've actually ended up doing a comic book shopping episode with that guy. But
I didn't know that.
I was a big fan of Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. So I followed him in all of his movies that he's been in. But he was in hot off The Walking Dead, and whoever was gonna be the host, commentator, MC or whatever, bailed out there. So Schnepp, can you do this? And it was literally, it was 5 minutes before. I was like, all right, let's rock this. So I went backstage and met him, and he was like, all right, remember, I'm the star. He said that to me. I was like, dude, I got you, man. I know your entire, discography. Relax, But I think he felt like, well, who is this dude? And it totally makes sense. Any actor is like, I'm not going to get grandstanded by this guy. And I was like, nah, dude, I got you. And so,
it's kind of a weird thing to say too, but whatever.
Well, but look, I get it though. It was he just was saying don't grandstand. They're here for me, which I'm like, I get it. But it was so much fun for me to introduce him. I was like, how many people did that get everyone psyched up? How many people know about Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer? What about Cliffhanger? What about listed off all the movies all the way.
You were ready to go already.
Yeah. All the way up through Guardians. So I was like, yo, and so by the time he came out, people were cheering and, asking all the, he got into asking for the people, different questions similar to me, where I was like, yo, Stripey, some guy was wearing a stripey hat. I was like, yo, Caps, what's up? So he started chiming in, getting people to answer questions. So it was a lot of fun. And so that's
it went really well. It was,
But that's that fun.
Everybody around it could feel the sense of excitement that just happened.
Well, good, man.
Schnepp went up and did a good job. That
thanks.
was crazy.
But that's why I do that stuff. I mean, it's kind of it comes from I was into doing theater back when I was in high school, and then doing weird, crazy performance art stuff. It's just fun.
And you did that on my old podcast where you played a character, maybe.
Yeah.
People might not realize, but it just turned on. It was like, holy shit, I'm watching something happen
Well,
right here that I'm
many of my friends back in Chicago were all improvers,
Yeah.
and even though I never was part of the Upright Citizens Brigade or any
Yeah.
of those things, they were all my friends, and I hung out with all those people, like from the Annoyance Theater, the Upright Citizens Brigade, and so that's why I ended up directing an episode of the Upright Citizens for their pilot, is because I just knew all of them, and they worked on a weird science fiction thing I made with a friend of mine called Mad Science, which I'll put out next year at some point. It's like the 24th and a half anniversary, so I was like, it's probably in time for people to see this weird thing that like a ton of Chicago celebrities from the 90s are all in. So this is like one of those things.
You're like, you've got sort of different worlds going on because you're doing the hosting thing and everything.
Right.
Do you ever run into that? Like, I could imagine someone complaining like, oh, he's just a movie critic. What does he know about making movies or writing or
I
something
love
like
that.
Does that ever come up?
It happens all the time, because it's the weirdest thing is like when someone identifies with you, sometimes they automatically in their own mind lock you out of even the things that you did. They're like, well, you're just like me. You love movies, and what do you think of Man of Steel and stuff like that. And they are right. I am just like them. I have either similar or not, opposite opinions. But they forget that I've actually been in the business for 20 years making TV shows and movies, like all facets of storyboarding, designing, editing, directing, producing. So it is one of those weird things where people talk to me like I haven't made these things, and I'm sort of like, or that that's the weird thing. And it's a disconnect, but I understand why the disconnect is there. But I always get a kick out of it where I'm like, yeah, no, I know. I actually was directing a TV show for 8 years and went off during my breaks and directed like 8 other shows, and also, so it's like, it's a weird thing because a lot of people can't comprehend that. I've had so many different little careers, like editing, Space Ghost, and all these little micro jobs that I could have just been an editor for the rest of my life. But so it's, for myself, it's not that I get bored doing any of these jobs, but I want to challenge myself. That's the whole reason I did a documentary. I'd never made a documentary or a feature film, for that matter, and a documentary feature film. And it was one of those things where I was like, I'd just been directing cartoons for literally 12 years of my life, and I was like,
I remember you saying that many times on set when we were about to interview someone. You'd just be like, "Man, I don't know. I've been making cartoons. I don't know. I've never done this."
Yeah,
and you were like straight up about it.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. And I was like, it was really for the experience.
Yeah.
And boy, was it an experience. It took a lot longer, like almost 3 years to finish the documentary.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad that we took our time with it and we made it the way we had to make it. So, I mean, these are all learning experiences. So for myself, like there's a lot of people who don't know I'm a host on a YouTube show and just know me only as a doc filmmaker and don't know I directed TV shows and made narrative. So they're like, when's your next doc? So I get that a lot, which I'm not angry with. I'm like, oh, well, I'm working on this. I always tell people, I try not to take any offense, because if anyone's interested in what you're doing, that's a bonus. That's cool that they like what you're doing, whatever aspect of it is that you are doing.
It seems to have really helped you to do this hosting thing.
It has. It's been
it's opened a lot of doors, I think.
It's opened so many doors, and it made me happy, not only with the things I've done in my career, but it also kind of like helped me reach out to new fans and new people who might appreciate the other things that I'm doing. And, doing these talk shows with, people who have never done a television show in their life. A lot of these people are like, sort of like, they just love talking about movies, but they actually haven't, made that much stuff. So it's sort of like, it doesn't matter. It's like I can have a great, amazing conversation with a lot of these people. Some of them have done their own shows. Some of them are, in different fields. Like the host of Movie Talk now is Mark Ells, and he's a comedian, and he's incredibly funny. He performs across the country almost every other weekend. He's somewhere else. Tonight I'm at Funny Bone, or next week I'm at Zany's. So he's like, and he's really good. Like, I went and seen him perform. I was like, my God, the guy is hilarious. So, and that's his amazing skill set. So, I feel like it's kind of cool that we have a lot of different people as part of this roster of people talking about their opinions on movies coming out. Or for Heroes, I'm constantly doing the shows with Amy Dallin, who works at House of Secrets and has her own shows and writing her own stuff, and Robert Meyer Burnett, who's wrote and directed Free Enterprise, and he's edited a ton of behind the scenes DVD special features. He's a director in his own right. So it's like, all these different people that I have on as a regular guests, panelists. And it's why, because we love talking about, like, well, Thor Ragnarok, what happened? It's like, what's going on with that? Or like Justice League. And it's sort of like, because we read those comics when we were kids, and it's kind of fun to see all of this stuff happen now. And so constantly calling it, we're in the golden age of movies and television. The golden age of comic book realizations is where we really are. And like I said, everybody's a nerd, but nobody's a nerd. It's sort of like, it's kind of true. Like, everybody's wearing a Batman shirt or like some Captain America shirt, and they don't even know who Captain America is, or they're just like, I love that movie. But outside of that, I'm not mad at people anymore. I did harbor some. I
remember that you were pissed off about that. You made some different videos about it. And things like that. It
kind of irked me a little bit that people were like, didn't know what the hell they were wearing.
You were an angry young man like I was.
Yes. And then you slowly realize it's like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's like, it's okay because guess what? There's an interest there. And I think that's the most important part, is to not like, stomp the interest or like, no, you don't. It's like, is to fan the interest and to say, if you like that, you might like this.
So I've known you somewhere around 8 years.
Wow.
I think. I remember the first time we hung out was sort of at a place like this. It was called The Corner.
I remember that.
It was a place over by Titmouse.
It was Lexington.
Lexington
and Highland.
Yeah, I think we sat down there and had lunch. Talked about, you actually said some of the same things you said way back then, and I thought, wow, that's one of the first things he ever said to me when we first got together.
Well, I guess I'm saying the same shit.
Yeah, it's just no. But I'm curious. I've gone through a lot of changes in those years. I wonder if you have any thoughts on your personal growth or changes as time has gone on in that time period.
Sure.
Any valuable lessons you've learned or had to change yourself?
Patience. I feel I've gotten more patience. I've learned to accept that some things are just not going to work out, no matter how hard you try to make them work out. They're out of your control.
Yeah.
And when things are out of your control, or you've given up control over certain things, even if you trusted them to be done the right way, and then you're betrayed or whatever happened because you gave up your control, you have to go. You just have to accept it. And so that's one of those things where there's a certain thing where it's like, all right, well, you can be angry, you could fight those things, or you can actually move on and learn from your mistakes. And I feel like there's nothing wrong with learning from your mistakes, and I feel that's actually how you become a better person. So those are the things that I've learned over the last 8 years of going through a lot of different projects, working on different projects, making different projects, not making different projects, a whole bunch of different things. So, and just trying to be a better person in general. Like, sometimes, it's really important to be able to listen, and sometimes you get so carried away with your own life that you can get wrapped up in your own life. And it's important to be aware of your friends, be aware of everyone around you, the people that you work with, the people that you love, and be aware of what's going on. I mean, it's like life can go by very quickly. And sometimes it's like you make decisions, and I feel really comfortable with a lot of the decisions that I made. And I was questioning a lot of them maybe 8 years ago or 6 years ago. I was questioning, should I do this, or should I leave this one company, or should I do this? And I'm so happy that I did these things, because I've grown so much from doing those things. Sometimes you find yourself in a place that you could just be, and it's safe. And it's like, well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with playing it safe or staying safe, but at the same time, how will you grow? And you have to challenge yourself. And I felt like, over the years, I've realized I've done the right things, and I've become more comfortable in doing those things further on and moving forward in challenging myself, as a human being and as an artist, and moving forward with a lot of these other ideas or projects, or working with other people, or trying different things, or just as a human being, speaking, interacting with other people, trying to have that ability to grow and learn and be a better person. So, I mean, I'm not perfect. I'm definitely not 100% there yet, but it's one of those things that I feel like if I look back at 8 years ago and where I am now, I'm definitely a different person from then. I have, like you said, the same kind of mentality about a lot of those things, but I feel like I've also learned a lot from doing those things.
Well, there was just that one, just to be honest, there was that one thing you said when we first met was everybody wants to work in media, and that's why they come to LA.
Yes.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying that, and that was the thing I was referring to. I wasn't saying you're just repeating yourself.
No. Well, it's good that you remember what it is, but that is a truism.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I said that to a gal who I was in a lift, and she was like, I just moved here from Washington, D.C., and I'm not very happy, and I'm trying to get into photography. And I was like, well, don't, she was like, I think I'm going to be leaving at the end of this year. So she's only been here for like 4 months or something.
Oh, wow.
I was like, well, I mean, it's like, I said we're literally the same kind of thing where it's like all the, there's like 30 or 40 other photographers who are like want to do exactly what you do. And maybe you were a bigger photographer in Washington, D.C., and now you're here and there's like, 50 people, but you're in L.A., so it's a very surface world. And that's what a lot of people, when they first come here to specifically Hollywood.
What do you mean by a surface world?
What I mean is it's, some people are overcome by the amount of artifice that might be present in. It's really hard to meet people. It's really hard to break through or break in.
Yeah.
And so some people are so awkward and weird about it. They're just instantly be like, "Hey, I want to be an actor." And like, that's not how it works. Hey, I've got a script. Don't do that. There's all these things that you can't do.
Yeah.
But because people are all awkward, and I'm brand new here, and like, they end up freaking out, and then they just stay in their room and they're like, "This sucks. I'm alone," and then they leave.
Yeah.
They get a job. They work this job. They know a few people. Nothing really kind of works out. They might, if they're an actor, they might do a few of these theatrical presentations, or might pay to do these 5-minute acting reviews or whatever. But it's like, it's really about like kind of like, all right, well, I mean, if you're gonna, whatever it is you're gonna do, you want to kind of start to hang out in the places that those things are happening at. Start to try to find people who work in that field, in that business, and start to get to know them. And so a lot of them are going to be not your cup of tea, and a lot of them you're probably not going to like. But eventually you're going to find your group of people, and they are all here. I'm friends with a ton of awesome people, like incredibly talented, amazing, really smart, fun, creative people, like hundreds of them.
There's hundreds of me?
There's literally thousands of Carls. No, but it's like, but it took years to meet all these people.
Yeah.
And it took years to get rid of all the people that I don't want to hang out with. And I met this person and they suck or whatever. It's like, you're going to meet all these different people in your life. And like, some people are going to become your best friends and some people are going to not,
Yeah.
And it's, that's just how, but when you're brand new, you have to put in the time. And that's why I was like, well, it's like, there are like 50 or 60 photographers who probably want to do exactly what you want to do. And, it isn't a competition, but in a certain sense, it is about like getting out there and doing what it is you want to do, and just start doing it.
Yeah.
Like, don't wait for someone to hire you to do it. Start doing it. Find people. Like, you're a photographer. You need to photograph things, people. Or what are you photographing? Plants? That's free. Go, But if like people, go to, places where there are people who need to have photographs done, and just do a bunch of them until you feel like you've got enough done. Well, I did that in Washington, D.C. So it's like, sometimes you can't answer a question for someone. You just have to say, well, you have to put in that time. It's especially difficult in Los Angeles, because that's where it's all happening here, or a lot of it's happening in New York or Toronto, where it's like, if you want to get into TV, film production, a lot of people are making things over there, but like, you as an American aren't going to get hired. You can go to Toronto, but they're hiring all the people who live in Toronto. They're not going to hire you. You'll be like knocking on the door. Hey, I'd like to work on The Flash. Get out of here. And go apply for the job in Los Angeles. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's a weird thing, and none of it's easy. Because think about it like this: like, say you're brand new here, no one is going to hire you, because what if you screw up? The person who hired you is like, they're going to look like shit, and then that just kind of echoes forward. So you're sort of like, the reason it's such a hard circle to get into is because everybody's got each other's backs. And so the whole reason you would get hired in the first place is because that person would be like, I trust them to do their job.
Yeah.
Because these other people are trusting me to do my job. So it's a whole...
And a lot of times I'll end up working with people even if they have lesser skill, just because I trust them and know that they're not going to get in there and
exactly
cause a problem for me.
You've answered exactly that question. It's like the burning question for everybody who comes here is like, how do I get into that inner circle? It's like time and meeting the people and then working with them. So you'll end up like, maybe you'll work with like 30 different people and all 29 of them will not hire you again, but that 30th person will be like, come on back next, I've got another job in a month. And you prove your worth to those people, those few people, and they'll continually keep hiring you. And probably you'll slowly work your way up, and then those other people that work with those people will hire you because they're like, that person's trustworthy and they did a great job working with Carl or John, so I'll hire them on my projects. And then all of a sudden now your network of people that you're working with have now expanded. And now all of a sudden in 3-4 years, now you're working with 20 or 30 different people at any number of times. Like, I'm booked on this weekend because I'm doing this, and that's now, and you're doing the thing that you wanted to do. And now you're moving forward in the things that you want to do. So I mean, it's like about, there is no right amount of time. It could take a year, it could take 1 week, it could take 2 years, it could take 3 years. And it's also about the perseverance, not giving up on yourself. Who's your worst enemy? You. Your worst enemy is the person that you look at in the mirror every day. They're the person who's holding you back. There's no other people who care about what you're doing. Think about it. Like, you're like, we're doing these weirdo projects on Kickstarter. Nobody else cares. Really,
we have to care about them way more than anybody else.
But it's an honest thing. It's like, there are people who are like, hey, I'll pitch in some money. I want to see whatever you're going to make. That's the cool thing. But it's like, you've got to be the motivating factor for making the things that you want to make. And then that person in the mirror is also the one who's going to be like, it's not going to happen, or this or that.
That was a rough one to get over, realizing that nobody's waiting around for me to make my next thing.
Right.
And I just got to get up every day and make my next thing.
Yeah.
And just keep doing that.
But the freedom of knowing that is the most exhilarating thing, because that thing is like, you're making what you're making for you and a few other people who are going to dig it. And then when you exponentially make those few other people 1,000 people, and exponentially make those 1,000 people 100,000 people, then you realize, like, oh, I've actually got a lot of people who will really appreciate this when they finally see it. So that's what it's all worth. While, because you're trying to communicate an idea, trying to share something, whether it's funny or a weird idea or whatever it is. That's the reason you do those things. So you shouldn't be stopping yourself from doing those things. You should be helping yourself to do those things. So
sometimes I just like to learn how to execute a project.
Right?
Like, I wonder how I can do this. How would I how would I write a book? Well, I'll learn how to write a book.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like,
and that's a cool thing. I'm not like that, but I know you are, and you've done all those things.
Yeah.
You've written books, you've made CDs, you've done music, you've done documentaries. So it's like you have that interior drive, which is different than my interior drive, but they both work, and the output is there. So it's one of those things that, I wish people wouldn't give up on themselves as easily as they do. And that's what happens. Like, a lot of people are like, when I moved out here, a lot of people were like out here for a year or two, either before me or after me, and then they stopped or they gave up.
Yeah.
It's not working out. Well, because you're giving up on yourself. Like I said, no one else is like, it's not like nobody cares. People are like, oh, it was fun to hang out with you. It's like, yeah, of course, when you have friends, you're like, oh, that person's moving back or leaving. They're bummed or whatever, but it's like you end up moving on with your life. It's not like, well, my life ends because this person moved away. Yeah. So it's like, ultimately, when you give up on your own dreams, no one else is there to, you should really do your dream, because they've got their own dreams to do.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to be your own dream fulfiller.
Yeah.
And
another part of that is a little bit, it can be hard. I used to always have this thing where I wanted my friends to pursue their dreams. And I try to drag them kicking and screaming, like, come on, let's do your thing.
I know.
And then I couldn't get them to do it.
I think a lot of people had that, Carl, because I had that too in my 20s. I would
we're all going to get together and we're going to be, this motorcycle that we're riding. But you
realize, ultimately, when you're doing that, you're wasting not only your time, but you're wasting their time too, because they really don't want to do that thing that they say they want to do.
Yeah.
You're like, come on, remember that thing we talked about, and you did that thing, and you made a few efforts to make that thing. I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you get to the finish line. They don't even want to get halfway to the finish line.
Yeah.
They're filled with their own self-doubt.
And then all it does is push them away, because they don't want to be around me, because they know I'm going to hound them to, Or
they cling more to you, And they're I'm lost without you helping me do this. We're like, I didn't say I would do the thing for you. It's like, you got to do the thing. So there's like, it really is about, this whole thing has become a self-help empowerment hour, but I really do think it's like, you've got to help people realize they got to do things on their own, and it's good. Mm-hmm. That's a good thing you're doing this on your own. It's a positive thing. I've got your back. You can call me and talk about the thing, but like, you're doing your dream. I'm making my dream. So it's kind of like, that's the most important part. And also, like I said, being aware of what it is you're trying to do and why you're doing it, and not stopping and blocking yourself from doing it. Those things are easier to say than to, I'm not saying that sometimes I'm not blocking myself. Sometimes I am. I'm the big obstacle. I'm like, I'll get over there as soon as I get myself out of the way. I can't move myself. How did I duplicate into 4 larger versions of myself in my way? So sometimes you are the thing that's in your way, and you have to figure out, well, why am I in my way this time? There's not always an easy answer for it, It's not just the version of you in the mirror. It's all these other multiple deeper versions of you that you're stopping yourself from doing certain things. So, that's for every single individual person to figure out on their own. And
on this whole topic, neuroticism is often defined as someone that's susceptible to depression and anxiety.
Right.
Are you a person that is neurotic or susceptible to depression and anxiety?
No.
No, you're pretty steady?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a weird thing, because I always wonder about that, because I'm not.
Yeah.
So I've never been on any kind of antidepressants, and I've never fallen into a depressed mode.
Yeah.
Or
That's interesting.
or even anxiety. Sometimes, like I might get a butterfly or something about certain, but I don't have anxiety about meeting people or getting on stage or talking to anybody.
Yeah.
So I don't really have those kinds of. I don't really get depressed, or I'm in a depressed, funky state. I'm not going out or whatever.
Yeah.
If I am ever depressed, I snap out of it, like literally by myself or on my own. So, it's harder for me to put myself in the mind space of someone who is like that, because since I truly don't understand it, because I can't.
You just don't experience it.
Yeah, so it's hard. Sometimes it is hard to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Like when you hear someone say, "Put yourself in my shoes," and you're like, "I'm going to try."
Yeah.
But it's not like I'm not emotionally able to do it, but I want to be there to be able to try to do that. But at the same time, since my mind doesn't work that way, it's really hard for me to think that way and to even understand and be that way. So, what about you?
Oh yeah, highly neurotic. And recently took a test on a Big 5 personality test. Extremely neurotic, like 97% on neuroticism.
Wow.
So that was pretty impressive. I was like, damn, I didn't even know I'm that bad, but that's pretty good.
Wow.
So yeah, I was curious about that, because I've known you a long time, and we don't seem to share that same thing.
No.
I mean, you get pissed about things.
Yeah.
You seem to have an anger,
Yes.
experience anger.
Yes.
Which I have at times
definitely
also.
experience anger, and usually I'll just, be like, blah, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
So I don't hold on to it, or if it is there, then it's about specific things. So as I could be triggered. So that's probably a bad thing for me, is like that thing that I'm angry about is still there. It's like the Hulk or whatever. You're like, as long as you don't mention those things, he's fine. But if you mention that, he might get ornery or mad or mean. So I have those mean buttons that are so those are my whatever triggers, or I have those things where I'll get there, and then all of a sudden I'll talk about those things that I'm angry with, but then I'm back to normal. Yeah. So it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, if we broach those, it can be
scary because you're a big dude.
Oh, yeah.
Super tall, intimidating, loud guy. So it's like,
but luckily I'm usually always seated, and people are like, he's like a little tiny person. So I never have to. I never worry about being intimidating in those ways. But yeah.
Well, all right. Oh, and you've also gotten smaller in the waist. I just saw.
That's right.
I think you are wearing. Did you say you were wearing 38?
Yeah,
or 36?
36 right here. Yeah.
Because I'm between 38 and 36. So
well, see, I still have a bigger belly, but like everything else is shrinking away. So the belly, like right under the belly, is like it's a 36, and it's
nice.
It fits perfectly. And it's been literally getting healthier.
Yeah.
Because the doctors were like, you need to concentrate on stop eating all this crappy food and
I can see
eat
it
better.
in your disposition and everything. Your skin seems clearer. You seem, seem
thanks,
healthier
man.
in general.
Well, I mean, it's hard work.
I'm not saying your skin usually looks horrible.
No,
it's not one of those backhanded.
You look like the mummy normally.
No.
No, I mean, it's a weird thing though, dude. It's like, I mean, because America is like really all about junk food and like, here's these Twinkies, or like,
I just ate 2 boxes of mac and cheese before I came here.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like it's so easy to eat crap. And they make it like, isn't that delicious? It is delicious. So it's like, it's easier to eat unhealthy crap than it is to like, I must eat this. I must consume this salad.
You have to go out of your way to eat healthy. It's not it's not what is immediately in front of you.
Yeah, so I've been training and trying and not even succeeding all the time. And it's only maybe 30% succeeding, but I have succeeded in like cutting out putting sugar in my coffee. And I've succeeded in buying a bunch of shitty snacks in between meals. So I'll eat a really good breakfast. Breakfast is my favorite meal of the day. So I always try to have a good breakfast. And then if I don't worry about it. I skip it. And then I'm not going to,
What's weird is I've never known you to eat a lot. For the past 8 years or whatever, we'd go out somewhere and you'd be like, I'm going to have a muffin.
Yeah.
And like, just a muffin. Like, that's it? That's all you're going to eat all day?
But then probably 3 hours later, I'd have maybe a burger. Well, I don't eat, a vegetarian burger or something like that. Or like, and then, so what it was for me is like, I would be snacking all the time. Like I would have a muffin and then, maybe I'd go to work and I'd have like a Twix bar. And then maybe later I'd go to 7-Eleven and have like a pound cake and a piece of pizza. And then later I'd have dinner. See what I'm saying? So I'd have lunch, I'd have dinner, but I'd have all these like mini snacks and stuff in between that. And that's literally why I stayed the same weight that I was. I never like bloated too much. Up until the last year and a half, I was always like, 44, 42, 40, 40, 42, 40. Like I'd fluctuate.
Yeah.
I'd thicken up a little bit, but never get too fat. And I'd never get too thin. It was always like that. And so until I made an active decision, I'd be like, all right, I'm going to cut out snacking. And it just like I quit smoking, and it'll be my 7th year of not having a cigarette, December 1st.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Cold turkey smoke.
It's been that long?
Yeah, 7 years. I know it's crazy, but
did you occasionally sneak one or something?
No. And that's the whole thing is like, since I have an addictive type personality, and I know that,
I remember that was like the thing at Titmouse. It was like, if I could drive by any point, I'd know if John's there because he's out front.
Yeah, I smoked way too much, man. It was bad. So it was like, and I know that I enjoy it too much. So it was like it's a bad thing for me. And then I'm like, I'll smoke when I'm taking a break or I'm having coffee or before, when I wake up, when I go to sleep. So it's like just bad. So to master that and be able to control the urge until it's gone. And every once in a while I'll see somebody smoking. I'll be like, I used to do that.
Yeah.
Or even like about a month ago, I saw someone, I was like, I could have a smoke. And then I was like instantly, no, you can't, because you'll want another and another and another. And that's how you are. And I was like, yep. So other people can still smoke around me, and I understand it. And I get it. And there's people who smoke, and I don't have any problems with them smoking. But I know for myself, I can't. Just like the same reason, if I want to get healthy, I can't like be pounding sugar. I can't fucking be eating garbage food anymore. I need to eat salads. I need to make sure I'm eating vegetables and make sure I'm doing that. And so I've really tried to concentrate on making sure I'm getting greens at the very least, at least once a day. And so, who doesn't like bread? So I'm not gluten free or anything. Like I'm trying to avoid nitrates and those. It's like, luckily it's like, hey, look, I gotta rock this way. And by doing that, that's when I started losing weight, and it was just a natural byproduct of that. And then I was like, well, maybe maybe the next few months I'll actually start exercising, and then I'll even lose more weight and feel even better. But it was one of those things.
Don't get a bad knee like I have.
Well, yeah.
That's been my excuse. Like my knee is kind of fucked up, so I can't jog.
Oh man,
do anything. So it's like.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Don't do that.
All right. Well, I will try not to get a bad knee, but yeah. So I mean, it was fun to finally, I was like wearing 38s for like the last 6 months, and they started getting all baggy and weird.
Yep.
And I hate baggy, like, would you poop in your pants, like baggy butt stuff.
But do you feel like you lost a lot of weight when you look at yourself? You're like, oh, I'm a lot skinnier.
Only recently have I realized I was like, all right, I'm not, I've kind of like I just have to start doing some sit-ups to, lose the
My weight goes up and down, and I don't realize it looking in the mirror. But then I'll see a video of myself that I shot 6 months ago.
Right.
Like, oh man, I was looking porky.
Well, that's when I look at Facebook has that friendly way of like 5
yeah.
years ago, it was like roundo face,
Yeah.
like super, I have a super round face, like thickening. I'm like, okay. Yeah, it's literally like, okay, I could see that I was heavier. So it's like,
Facebook should tell you.
Right.
Like as you're,
That's right.
at some point.
You are 4 quadrants heavier than you 3 millimeters thicker. Yeah.
Yeah.
But thanks for noticing. I posted it. I'm not really one of those people who like does like selfie photos with the camera where I'm like, I post pictures of my stupid face a lot, but I try to put other things up there too. So it's not like this is my self-obsession, but I was like trying on these pants. I was like, oh man, I'm kind of proud of this moment for myself, and I just wanted to share that, and it was great. I got a lot of really great responses from
that's
people.
really cool.
And a lot of people were like, hey, I'm right there with you, or like I'm trying to lose weight, or I'm a size 32, or congratulations, or like how did you do it? And I just was like, hey, I stopped snacking and I stopped eating candy.
Yeah.
And that's not, I didn't 100% stop. I just stopped doing it on a daily, regular basis. Like on the weekends, I'll have, a piece of pie or a piece of, it's like, I'm not like punishing myself, like, no, not never. It's more like pacing it out, and it's not just like crushing the routine of like, no, I'm going to go walk over to this, 7-Eleven and get garbage food and all this other stuff, and just making it more about like, all right, well, I'm going to eat 3 times a day, and if I miss a meal, I'm not going to eat late at night to make up for it. It's like I just missed that meal, then I'm going to make sure I eat tomorrow morning. So it's that kind of thing too, is like kind of bracketing it so that then you don't want to miss a meal, because then when you're like, you're not feeling well because you forgot to eat, then you're like, I'm not going to do that again. So then you're like, get used to eating 3 times a day, and that's pretty regular, I guess. It's sort of like, oh, well, most regular people eat 3 times a day, don't they? Yes. Even though like, I'm not going by the weird USDA like bizarre triangle of foods, that's all most of it's fake and made up. So it's sort of like, look, just make sure you're eating vegetables, that's the most important thing, everything else in moderation. I love bread. Like I was like, I can eat like 8 pieces of toast.
Chocolate chip cookies for me.
But why? So it's like, if I could eat 2 pieces of toast, I'm totally happy. See, that's where I had to start to limit myself, because it'd be like, I'd have 4 pieces of bread in the morning.
Yeah.
Like, because I love toast.
Yeah,
I'm
that'll
like,
do it.
toast is just really good.
Yeah.
So now it's 2, and it's like, guess what? I'm going to have 2 more tomorrow. So the whole idea of like from in my mind, how I was able to at least help myself was, there's no reason to have like 2 bowls of cereal when you can have 1. And that should be enough. And it actually is enough. But like in your mind, you're like,
Right.
I'm going to have 3,
Oh, yeah.
or whatever. Especially as an adult, I'll eat as much as I want. No
Yep.
one can stop me, or whatever. The whole reason you end up gaining all this weight
Yeah.
is because of that freedom. And you're not doing it to like, I'll make sure I screw myself up. It's more about like, well, no one's going to tell me what to do or whatever. I'm going to enjoy this or whatever. There's these kinds of things that you're like, well, just enjoy it in moderation, because otherwise you're going to, gain a ton of weight. It's logically strange. Like, that's weird that I ate these 5 bowls of cereal and then gained 5 pounds. It's because you went to sleep. It's like you instantly it all became fat.
Yeah.
You didn't work any of it off. So it's like, your body is just sort of like, dude, what are you doing? It's like if all, you go back to those cartoons where all the body parts are talking to each other, and the stomach would be like, ease up, motherfucker, So, yeah. Size 36. I'm looking to, I'm not like on some kind of must get to size 22. It's like, hey, look, 36 is awesome. 34, 32, fine. 36 is fine too. I'm just more about just like, like we were talking about earlier, that energy. Like, you ever get tired? Like, yeah, like, cause I get up early in the morning to do these like YouTube videos, and then
Oh, really?
Yeah. We shoot all of them in the morning.
Oh, like what time?
The Movie Talk is live at 9 a.m.
Oh.
And we have like a pre-pro meeting at 8:30.
People
So
watching it live at 9 a.m.?
at 9 a.m. Yeah, thousands of people
Bunch
are
of
on.
East Coasters, huh?
East Coasters and LA and all around the world.
crap.
That's what the crazy thing about YouTube is. It's global.
Yeah.
So there's people from all around the world, literally, like, watching the
Didn't
show.
know you guys shoot it so early.
Yeah. So we do that, and then I usually film Heroes like about an hour later.
Oh, wow.
And then it goes up 3 hours later, but I
So
film
you
it
do
right
that
then.
3 days a week at 9 a.m.?
Yeah. So
Oh.
I gotta get up at 7:30, which is horrible.
Oh, yeah.
Especially for someone like
Yeah,
me
I
who's
can't
like,
do it.
well, guess what? I can because I have
That's
to.
amazing.
No, I have to. So it's like
Yeah.
one of those weird things where I've gotten used to it. But what ends up happening is then I have the entire afternoon free to do my
Yep.
own projects
Yep.
and what I want to do. So that's what I've been doing. I've been writing and drawing and doing that kind of stuff. And really kind of like, especially over the last like couple months, I've been like, I got to force myself to enjoy doing this, like my
Yes.
own thing.
That's
Not-
another big part of it.
Yeah.
So
So
actually enjoying doing it.
yeah, and I do enjoy doing it, but it's like I had gotten so controlled by all these other projects and doing these other things that I didn't necessarily was really what I wanted to be doing. Is like this kind of you got to work on what you want to do. So, yeah, so that's kind of what I'm doing right now. And then like I said, then as nighttime rolls around, I'm like get dinner with Holly, and like we'll hang out. Maybe we'll watch something, but sometimes I'm like I feel like, oh man, I'm an old man. It's actually no, because you got up at 7:30.
Yeah.
This is just natural that you should be tired at 11 o'clock at night, and you shouldn't be binging like 8 shows till 3 in the morning because you got to get up at 7:30. So now I know my clock is like I'm going to sleep around 12:30 or whatever. So it makes it like my old party days are definitely like, let's go out to the Burgundy room till 2 in the morning is not happening. So
Yeah, you were always out.
yeah.
Standing there with maybe a glass of wine in one hand or some other kind of alcoholic drink, and then a glass of water in the other.
That's right.
That was always your signature.
Yeah. Well, because even when I was like drinking exorbitant amounts of alcohol, it was like you got to hydrate.
Yeah.
You can't just be pounding Guinness,
Little sip of water, little sip of wine.
Yeah.
Little sip of
Yeah. So it's important. So
Oh, man, that's funny. Well, we should wrap this up. Remember, everybody, go check out our Kickstarters. 5.
Yep, 5. You could just type in my name, Jon Schnepp, JONSCHNEPP on Kickstarter, or just if you type in 5 and just spell it out, FIVE. There's other things that are called 5, so it's
Pledge
easier.
to all of them.
Yeah,
all 5 of them.
Pledge to all of them, but yeah, just type in my last name, Schnepp, and that'll pop up, and you can get your name in the credits, or you could get all 5 issues if you want. Support it, and then also support Carl's, the Oracle of Outer Space.
The Oracle of Outer Space. I didn't do any name in the credits this time on mine for some reason.
No,
And I don't know if it's making a difference or not.
you can add it.
Yeah.
Hey.
I purposefully made the first reward at like $34 or something.
No, I mean, but that's a smart thing. I think you have to. There's one that's like for $10 you get thank you.
I just didn't do any of those yet. I just
Okay.
didn't bother because I thought,
But
if you're gonna kick in,
Right.
come on, kick in a little more.
Sure.
Because $5 or $10 isn't gonna do much.
Right. No,
In the
there's
long
people
run.
but I look at it like there's people who are seriously, I want to contribute, but
Yeah.
I'm broke and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do not have
Yeah.
more than $5. That's all I could do. And it's like I'm like always thankful to anybody who contributes anything. So
Sure. I tried it this way this time around to see what would happen.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, if all you could afford to contribute to Carl is $5, pitch in $5. It might not be on there, but you can contribute $5 and it'll go in.
Right. You can still.
Yeah.
There were a couple of people who just put in $10 for no reward.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll send them something special or something like that.
Well,
but-
I mean, you just send them a digital thank you. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what like anybody who puts in like $5 or $10, that kind of thing. But definitely all of me and Carl's rewards are like they start out around $25, $35, and then the highest ones are like you be a producer or whatever. It's like there's $1,000, $2,000. But
Yeah.
there's all the middle ones where Carl has like you can be a cameo in his cartoon. I have you can be a cameo in my comic book, and there's a couple $100 you can be drawn in or you could be voiced in. So those are ones for like people who want to have a keepsake memory, who also want to be like, hey, can I use it for my reel? And
Yep.
yeah, you can totally use it for your reel, or you can be like, hey, I'm in this comic book, and it's gonna be a hardcover comic that comes out and be like globally printed all around the world, or it'll be on YouTube that everyone can see anywhere. So
I did that on my last album too. I custom wrote songs for people.
oh wow,
I sold
right on.
like 5 of those.
Nice.
So-
well, our helicopter is here to pick us
shit.
up.
Oh shit.
So
Bye.